Well, hi there, students. Today I'm going to show you a demonstration on how to draw the mouth. Now, if you look at this mouth, there's a whole lot going on here. This is coming after Unit 3, or the unit where we study value and shading. The mouth is a very complex form with all sorts of hills and valleys and peaks and mountaintops. The cool thing is you can draw any type of mouth. There is a wide variety of different mouths that you can draw, and in other screencasts you'll see how to do that simply by manipulating the individual components of each mouth. I break it down into just 6 major pieces, and we're going to examine those in detail briefly. But as you can see, male and female mouths, there's a major difference. Also, ethnicity plays a role, as do genetics. But the 6 parts of the mouth are as follows. You've got the cleft in the upper top, which also can be called the philtrum. You've got the top lip, the bottom lip, the mouth corners, the mouth line, and also the shadow under the bottom lip between the chin and the bottom lip. Now, it's also important before shading to understand how light functions on the mouth. Since the nose covers up the mouth and also the top lip sticks out beyond the bottom lip, that's going to affect your values. That's something that you need to take into consideration before shading. Typically, that's why the top lip is darker and the bottom lip is lighter. There are very few highlights on the mouth unless you're wearing lip gloss or lipstick. Now, if you refer to this Frayer document that I have, there's also a demonstration using this with the mouth gridded. This is a great tool to help you understand where all of the peaks and valleys are located in the mouth. And so as I do my demonstration, I'm going to do some shading up here at the top of the cleft, or other words called the philtrum. There's going to be a lot of shadow on the top lip, a lot of it below the bottom lip and between the chin. Now the bottom lip is going to be lighter, and up at the very, very top on the left and the right sides of the upper cleft, you're going to have some shadow, and that'll depend on your light source. If your light's coming from the right or the left, well, then one side will be darker than the other. And lastly, you're going to see the corners of the mouth. And one thing to be mindful of is how the mouth line is not a flat line, or not even a curved line. It's got life and action. There's all sorts of action in the mouth. And now we begin the drawing. This is a male mouth that I'm going to draw, so I start with the mouth line first. It's a gentle curve, and then I make marks on the top and the bottom to help me gauge where the lips are going to be at. I add all the major planes. They're all roughed in very lightly. We're not about detail at this stage. And so, because the lips are a different pigment typically than the skin, that can also vary because of ethnicity, but because the lips are different, I always start by painting in a light value over the lips. Now we're also going to shade the skin tone. There's really not going to be any white in this piece whatsoever. Everything's going to be covered in value. So I darken up the lips just to make sure they're separate and choose where my light source is going to be. My first shadow that I start with is going to be the top lip. The light source casts a shadow on the top lip, so I block in a value shape and simply paint in about a pressure 1.5 to pressure 2 value. Now I don't like to have a hard edge at the top of that shadow on my lip, so I like to fade it in to the lighter portions of it. And so, because the light source is shining on the lower lip, and the lower lip is kind of a cylinder, I block in a shadow on the bottom portion of that. Treat each plane as its own individual shape. I darken the mouth corners, and I go in and I darken the mouth line once more. And the mouth line has action in it. You're going to find some areas that get bigger and thicker and thinner. A mouth line with no line weight, with no thickness to it, is a dead mouth. And so try to just look for all little nooks and crannies in there. And finally, there's a little bit of a shadow even further, right as the mouth line starts to become the portion of the top lip. And I just go in and I add extra contrast, and I fade my values into the lighter ones to make it look more and more natural. Now I'm going to add a little bit of detail. Let's turn that mouth line from a line into an area with all sorts of little ripples and cracks and crevices. All that is directional hatching, following the shape of the lip. And since it's cylindrical, the angle that your curve is going to go when you draw those lip ripples will determine how realistic it looks. So just adding detail work over here, I'm smoothing some of the values in. And at this stage, I'm going in to punch up the contrast. And there's a small cast shadow on the top lip as well, because once again, the bottom lip stands out in front of it. So it's intercepting some of that light that casts onto the bottom lip. And at this stage, once again, just increasing contrast. If everything looks dead and flat, then you need more contrast. All right, now I'm shading the cleft, and since the light source is coming from the upper right, we have a hill on the right of the cleft, and that's going to cast a little bit of a shadow. So the right part of the cleft is going to be a little darker than the left. Now I'm adding very light skin tone over the top of everything around the lips. That's what makes it look realistic. There's no white, just different degrees of gray. And I'm using a mechanical pencil, and this is just a pressure 1, very light, almost no pressure whatsoever. Now, the sides of the lips slant down because of the teeth, so I'm layering in another shot, blending my values. And because, once again, the left part of that cleft is a hill, it's casting a slight shadow on both sides. That's what makes it real and believable. So go over your drawings multiple times. Layer. That smooths out the values in between each stroke. So I'm shading now the very bottom of the cleft between the chin and the bottom lip. Classic example of layering. I start very light and then work my way up darker and darker. The reason for that is because it's always easier to add dark than it is to take away. And I just roughly block in some darker values, and I go in and I smooth them out a little bit later. What you're looking for is a nice sandy tone and texture in it. And you get that by drawing very lightly over your values. The pencil becomes a blending stump. It physically grinds the lead rather than adding more lead. And last finishing touches, making some areas dark that need to be darkened. Smoothing some areas. I needed to define this bottom lip a little bit better because it was blending in with that bottom shadow. And this is it. That is how you shade the mouth. If you missed any parts or nothing stuck, it's okay. Watch it again. I look forward to seeing you. Bye.